So we're going to start this lesson with just a brief review of the previous 3 lessons. So we're going to quickly review what we need to do with reducing, converting fractions, and we're also going to do a quick review of adding and subtracting. Then I'll give you a second video with the multiplication lesson. So first of all, to start out, let's just work through the following questions. It says reduce the following fractions. So we have 3 and 6/8. In order to reduce that, we need to divide the 6 and the 8 by the same number. We can divide 6 by 2 and 8 by 2. They're both even numbers. Dividing both by 2, we get 3. The 3 doesn't have to change. The whole always stays the same. And 3/4. That's our answer. For question 6, the next question, 16 over 36. Again, we have 2 fractions that are both even. Now, there's a couple ways you could approach this one. I'm going to look at it and I'll say, okay, they're both even. Let's divide by 2. If you see something larger, go ahead and use it. There is an option. It doesn't have to be 2. You could choose a larger number. So 16 divided by 2 is 8. 36 divided by 2 is going to give me 18. And then we still notice they're still even, so we have to keep reducing. Again, let's divide both by 2. And 8 divided by 2 is 4. 18 divided by 2 is 9. 4 and 9 cannot reduce any further, so 4/9 is our final answer. So 1636 is the same as 4/9. Down here, we want to write the following fractions with this same denominator. So we have a 5 and a 12. Now this is where it's good to know your 12 times tables. It'll even help you out when you're doing conversions between feet and inches, since there's 12 inches in a foot. 5 times 12 is 60. That's the closest multiple you are going to find. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to take the 5, we're going to multiply it by 12. The 2 gets multiplied by 12. So 24 over 60. And then over here, 5 times 5. And then 12 times 5 gives us 60 on the bottom as well. So 25 over 60. 5 times 5 is 25. 5 times 12 is once again 60. All right. Even though for some reason 5/12 seems smaller. Just when you look at the numbers, but when you actually make common denominators, 5/12 is smaller than 2/5. I don't know, there's something in my head there that makes me think 5 is a lot smaller than 12. So that must mean the smallest section or the smallest fraction, but it's actually a larger fraction than 2/5. Next one, convert the following to improper fractions. So in order to do that, if you remember, we're going to take the number of pieces in a whole, multiply it by the wholes. So we're going to have 3 times 3 plus the one number that we're in the part case. So 3 times 3 plus 1 gives me 10. So 9 plus 1 is 10. So this is the same as 10/3. This is really important for your multiplying and dividing fractions. Next one, we have 16 pieces in a whole. 16 times 2 leaves me with 32 plus 5. This little notation students will often use. The last few years they really like that. They said it kind of makes it like a formula. So it's 2 times 16 plus 5. So 32 and 5 gives me 37/16. All right, so that's our improper fractions. We are going to make a lot of improper fractions for multiplying and dividing. 4 is really important for multiplying and dividing as well. Convert the following to mixed number fractions. Now, whenever you have quite large numbers, I would argue rather than doing the long division route, which you could totally do, we're going to do these using the calculator method. So in our calculator, we're going to do 115 divided by 4. So 115 divided by 4 leaves us with 28.75. Now this 0.75 you should recognize as 3/4. So 28 3/4. If you don't recognize that as 3/4, then you take just the fraction and multiply it by 4, and that will tell you, that'll give you 3, which will be how many quarters you have. All right, 28 3/4. Before we get to the end of our multiplying and dividing lesson, I will give you a calculator shortcut, which should be helpful for you. 276 over 35. This one's just a nasty one. We're going to see lots of nasty ones today. So let's do the same thing. 276 divided by 35 leaves us with, I didn't write the number down, 7.888857. I always keep extra decimals. Okay, so we know there's 7 wholes, so we're going to use that number. And then we're going to take this fraction. Oops, let me just go back a slide. There we are. We're going to take just the fraction section, decimal section, 0.8857. Keep extra decimals if you want. That's better than not keeping enough, times 35. Leaves me with 30.99. So that means it's 31 over 35. Another way you could do it, you could say, well, I know there's 7 wholes. How many pieces are in 7 wholes? And then subtract that. That's another option, but we're going to see lots of kind of these ugly, what I call ugly fractions. We're not going to see very nice fractions. Unfortunately, multiplying and dividing does that to us. With adding and subtracting, it's easy to keep them nice. Once we get to multiplying and dividing, they tend to get a little messy. All right, really quickly, sorry about the grainy pictures, but very quickly, let's identify the marked measurements. So the first one, we know we have 2 inches, that's clear. And we're on the shortest line, so we know the bottom is 16ths. We know that's 16ths because of just how many spaces there are, okay? This ruler happens to be 16ths. And how many 16ths are there? Well, this line is the quarter line, so this line is 4/16, and we're 1 past, so we have 5/16. Next one, 3 inches. And here's our half mark. And again, we're on a short 16th line. So a half is 8/16, and we are 1 less. So we'll take 1 off, which leaves me with 7/16. As you do more of these, you'll just look at it, you'll just know, you won't even have to think about it. This one, we're 4. We are on the second shortest line. So this is an 8th line. So we know the bottom will be 8ths. So if we look, 8ths, you get those second shortest lines every 2. So 2, so there's 1, 2, 3. We have 3/8. Or you could think of it as a half happens to be 4/8, and we go back to the next 8th line, which leaves us with 3/8. Okay, and then down here we'll use our decimal fractions again. So we have 3 2/10, which is 3.2. And then here, 5 9/10, which we never write centimeters that way. We would do 5.9. All right, so just a quick refresh. And very quickly, let's do a couple of adding questions. So take a minute, find your common denominators. Just turn my page here. There we go. All right, so 5 and 15, the common denominator is 15. 5 times 3 gives me 15. So whatever I do to the denominator, I'm going to do to the numerator. 2 times 3 is 6. 5 times 3 is 15, plus 1/15 equals 7/15. Okay. Next one, 3 1/4 minus 1 5/16. Well, between 4 and 16, 4 times 4 is 16, so we only have to change the 1. Whatever you do to the bottom, you do to the top. So 3 4/16 minus 1 and 5/16. You will notice this numerator is smaller than this one, so we need to borrow. So I'm going to borrow 1 from the 3. So I'm going to subtract 1 from 3. That 3 becomes a 2 and add 16 to my numerator. So now I have 2 and 20 over 16. That's the same as 3 and 4/16 minus 1 and 5/16. Leaves me with 2 minus 1, leaves me with 1. 20 minus 5 is 15/16. Next, we have 7 3/4 minus 4 5/8. Again, we only have to change one fraction. 4 times 2 gives me 8, so we'll multiply both by 2. So we have 7 6/8 minus 4 5/8. Nice, easy one. 6 is larger than 5, so we don't have to borrow. 7 minus 4 is 3. 6 minus 5 is 1/8. And then for the very last one here, we have 5 5/16 plus 2 7/8. You'll notice 8 times 2 is 16. These are nice, easy fractions for you to work with. 5 5/16 plus 2 14/16 leaves us with 5 plus 2 is 7. 5 14 leaves with 19/16. This is improper, so we need to switch it. So I'm going to just write that out here. 19/16 is the same as 1 3/16. 19 minus 16 leaves me with 3. So we have to add that back in. We already had 7 wholes, plus I have 1 extra whole over here. So we're going to have 8 3/16. And that's our final answer. So just a really quick review, just to make sure you still know all the pieces. These little reviews are great to go through just to get a quick summary. So with that, we'll do a quick pause here, and then you can continue with the next video on multiplying fractions.